All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to today's Power Hour presented by Advantage Route. Our presenters today are Janelle and Kat, and they'll be guiding you through month-end basics, essential steps for a smooth month-end process. Before we get started, a quick note. Today's webinar is focused solely on the Route Manager platform. If you're a ServeQuest user, the content we're covering today will not apply to your system. A separate session specifically for ServeQuest users is being scheduled, so you'll receive an invitation for that shortly. You're welcome to stay and listen in today, or feel free to sign off at any time. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll find several options, including a chat box and a Q&A box. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A box and we'll address them during the Q&A portion at the end. If we're unable to get to your question live, a member of our team will follow up with you after. This session is being recorded, so we'll send out a link to you within a few days. And if you miss anything or want to review the material, you'll be able to access that at your own convenience. So yeah, thank you again for being here, and I'll turn it over to Kat.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. And again, welcome back to another Power Hour. As mentioned, the focus for today is going to go over our month-end essentials and processes. Just as a quick note, we will be doing a basic overview of the processes during your month-end period close. If there's any questions you have or assistance you need on setup of these processes, please reach out to us either through the chat or separately with support. We can help you outside of the Power Hour with the setup process. But in general, again, if you do have questions or concerns, feel free to go ahead and leave it in the Q&A box. All right, so I will go ahead and get started into our agenda for the day. So we will be going over first the month-end checklist. So this will be a month-end checklist that is customary to each company. Next, we'll go over rents and reoccurring charges, followed by late fees. Then we'll be going over monthly auto payment batch processing, standard statements, closing the period, and then reports you would pull after all processes are complete. And once we have finished that, we'll be open for any kind of questions that you guys will have. And again, this process for Power Hour will be shown in the Route Manager version 8 software. So if anybody that is watching this Power Hour on version 7, just please take that into consideration. And if you do need to schedule an update to our version 8, please let our support team know. All right, so we will get into the first item on our checklist. So for month-end checklist, we will be going over creating a custom list for your company. Each company will have their own custom list catered to your guys' processes. For instance, some companies may have equipment that they'll generate rent for, and other companies may not. Next, we'll go over following the steps in order on your checklist. So once this checklist is created for your company, you will want to make sure that you maintain the order of the processes that you'll be using. This will help to keep things streamlined within the system, and then also make sure that your reporting and just posting processes are accurate. Afterwards, we'll go over making a backup. So whenever you do a month-end process, we want to make sure that you are creating a backup within the system. And this should take place before you perform any of the month-end steps on your checklist. And you can go through the system to run it. It is a single user mode process. So just make sure once you're ready to run that the only user running it is in the system. You can check with your IT on your company's server to make sure you're in the proper area to also log in and run the backup for yourselves. And then if you would like to confirm with Eros on how to make a backup manually, feel free to reach out to our support team. We can also show you this process, and I will also give a quick demonstration as well within RMA. But before I shoot over to RMA, I do want to show you an example of what our month-end checklist looks like. So here is a sample. You can actually find it on one of our knowledge base articles for month-end processing. There will be a link attached to that article with this specific checklist. In here, what you'll notice is we log most of the standard processes that you would use within your month-end period close. So the first notes that we have on our checklist is always to log out users for step 6 once we get to the actual close period process. And then you want to make sure that you backdate your module dates to the last day of the month. And this is important for things like running rents. If, let's say, I'm closing the month for June, but I'm in July 1st. I need to make sure my module date is backdated to the last day of June so that it has proper date and timestamps for the invoices that will be created. So just first item on our checklist, make sure all transactions have been posted for the month. We'll give you a step and location to post them there. Next item we'll go over is generating posts and rent for equipment. You will also go over generating post late fee charges, generating and posting for reoccurring charges. In the article for the KB that has this link, there are some additional charges you can do as well. We won't note them in our Power Hour, but if you do statement charges or administration charges, that is also on the link in the KB. After your charges are generated, we would go through generating statements, officially closing the period, and then generating a monthly auto credit card processing. And then finally, we will go through the reports for the month. And before I hand off to Janelle, I do want to quickly show again, if you are using the Route Manager software, making a backup is a single user mode function. So all you would need to do is make sure all users are logged out of the system. You would go under File, Backup/Restore, and then Backup Data Files, which would then prompt you to go into single user mode. And once you're in, it'll give you the file path to your backup that will get stored. You will run your backup, wait for it to complete, and then we would begin the process for month end. Alrighty, and now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to hand this over to Janelle. She will show you the processes that we will be running within the system.
Thanks, Kat. Hi, everyone. Just getting ready to share my screen here. There we go. Okay, so, and also just a couple of things to add. There we go. You should be able to see it now. Couple of things to add on the month-end checklist. The folks that have been onboarded onto Route Manager in the last 9 years have most likely gotten one of these from me or done month-end with me. So if you don't have one or you're newer to your company and you'd like to have one of these made, just reach out and we'll work on getting you a checklist created. But we do start out with a standard checklist, something like this, basic steps of closing the period, everything that may be required to lead you up to closing the period. But many companies do custom steps or other things they have to do as well. So what we'll do during your actual month end is add those in and put instructions, screenshots, things like that to help you create something custom. So what we're going through today is a very general checklist, what we give everybody when you first start with us, and we'll go through those steps. And I do want to talk about backdating the module date for those of you that aren't familiar with doing that. At the end of the month, most of us need a day or two into the new month before we can wrap everything up and actually do month end. So for example, if this Friday, August 1st, or maybe even Monday the 4th, we were still wrapping up July, when we get to doing the month end and doing our checklist, we would change our backdate, our module date to 7/31, so that when we generate rents, we post late fees, we generate reoccurring charges, they have the date of July on them. That way, when we get to our statement and send those out to customers at the end of the month, everything for the month of July is on those. So that's why we break those into steps. We post in between and we backdate to the month that we're closing. So we'll show you how to change the module date if you aren't familiar with that as well. And I will say we do have customers that may do things in a different order or may drop some of these things off. So this list isn't required for everybody to do. We just want to show you a range of options you have. I know we have companies that do the auto credit card before close period, maybe even before statements. So we are mentioning it here on this month-end checklist at the end, but you certainly can move that around depending on what your company needs to do for your business practice. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go over to Route Manager here and pull up our screen. Hopefully you can still see that there. I do want to point my cursor up at the module date. Top left corner module date says 7:30. That's today's date. So in my example, I noted we may be on August 1st, let's say Friday. And so what we want to do is double click in that module date field to bring up the module date screen, and we see date to be used. And in the case that we were on August 1st, we would backdate to 7/31. So I'm just changing this to 7/31/25. And that way the transaction date on my late fees, my reoccurring, my rents is all going to say 7/31. So let's change our module date. I also did want to make a note about rents or recurring charges. They don't necessarily have to be done on the last day of the month, but they're required to be done before you close your period for that period. So we have some customers that do rents at the beginning of the month. It's very common to do it around the 25th of the month, depending if you're ready to bill out your fees. Everybody's ready with their equipment in place. And you can generate those early. But again, referencing the checklist, you can go to your month-end checklist from this month and mark that off as being done, even if you did it earlier. And hopefully that makes sense. So rents themselves can be charged on any date during that billing period, but they cannot be charged if you close your period. If we miss that time frame and don't charge them for July, we can't go back and charge them for July. One other thing I did want to point out too, Kat and I talked about the setup of late fees, rents, reoccurring charges, even auto pay. You guys have questions on the setup, how to set those things up and place them into your database so that you're ready to use them at month end. Just reach out and let us know. We'll go through setting those things up with you. There's a lot of these steps are very unique to each company as well. Things like what rates and fees to charge for late fees. Your rents could be done on different cycles. You could do bill ahead or behind. So just let us know if you need help setting those up. Under our transactions menu is where most of our month-end tasks are completed. So a transactions menu, and the third section, or fourth section, I should say, down at the very top of this section, we've got generate rents charges. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And that brings our rent generation screen. I'm going to log into all my branches. And at the top of the equipment rent billing screen, you can see the billing period that we're on. And those of you that do already have your rent set up, you'll recognize those rent cycle codes. Our monthly rents, quarterly, annual, semi-annual. We've got many different options there. So it's showing any customers eligible for July rents under their frequency. Underneath that is our options for either statement billed or rents not billed. And those of you that aren't familiar with those two terms, statement billed means we need to bill the rent on the desktop. It is going to go show the customer they owe the rent on their statement. We do have some companies that bill rent on their driver delivery invoices. So if you have that particular setup, you would actually use rents not billed. at the end of the month. And that would pick up on any customers that didn't get a delivery and didn't have their rent billing done. So if there's somebody that had a skip delivery, they weren't home, their business was closed, so we didn't bill out their rents. The process of rents not billed will catch and bill that rent at the end of the month. Okay, so most of our options default for customers to statement billed, but if you do rents not billed, you would select that under the billing type. A little bit further down, we've got some options for billing reports. I definitely recommend billing the rent summary. If you'd like a detail that's going to show all of your equipment by serial number with the amount on the report when you're done. And then you also have the option to print the rental income report with a detail or not. Today, I'm just going to choose our summary. A little bit further from that, if you'd like to use the filters to only bill rents for specific customer types and equipment types, you can use the filters here before you charge the rents. Okay. And we also want to select to use this employee, meaning me. I'm logged in as administrator under my route manager. Use this employee for the rents. The reason we have you do that is if you don't select that, it will automatically attach to the driver's name that belongs in the route that's assigned to the customer. So that can be confusing if we've got rent sales attached to a driver's name in our reports and things like that. So we want to make sure we select that. I do want to note also on the bottom left, there's a delete unposted or delete pending rents button. So if you've generated rent, maybe you left and went to lunch, came back, you did it again, you didn't realize it, you want to clear it all and start over. Before you post the rent transactions, you can go back into the equipment rent billing and select that delete pending rent to set yourself back to the beginning and charge the rents again. Once we've got our criteria filled in, selecting the blue check mark, we do get a pop-up noting our module date. So we definitely can back out at this point if we forgot to change our date. In this case, mine says 7/31/25. I can go ahead and hit yes on there. And then we do get a display of all the eligible rents. So in our data today, I just set up a handful of them, but we can see our customer information, the equipment serial number, and the type. The billing period, it's a monthly rent for these customers for July, 31 days. And then the rent code and rent amount. If you happen to see a customer on this list that catches your eye that shouldn't be billed rent for some reason, you didn't get them pulled off in time, you can go ahead and select that customer by just tapping with your mouse, and that will change to no to billing them for this period. So you have that option in the list here. Down below, you can see the total amount of rents being charged and the dollar value. Okay. You can also select all and remove all with the buttons on the left. Once we select our blue check mark, we'll get that report pop up. I'm going to go ahead and just print this for us. Save it to the desktop. And then we're prompted to proceed with generate rents. Goes pretty fast, depending on how many rents you have. Once it's finished, you'll get a rents process complete. And if we go to our transactions, invoices, you can always double check and make sure everything looks good before we post. Okay, so now once we generate the rents, it creates an invoice on the desktop. We've got the customer's equipment serial number and the amount. Goes into our pending invoice area. And in between each transaction or process item that we do in our month-end checklist, I do suggest doing pre-post and post in between. And that way you're following a consistent pattern of generating the fee, posting once you're done, and we won't end up at the end where we forget to post anything. So I do have it noted on our slide here to make sure to post your rent transactions once you're done. Okay, so go ahead and close that out there. Our next item on this slide is the recurring charges. So briefly, recurring charges can be any type of charge using a charge code in a quantity on a customer. It doesn't have to be tied to a serial number like the rents we just did are. So if we need to bill out customers a monthly fee for any reason, I know we have some customers that would use it at the end of a month as a delivery fee or a service fee. We do have some customers that might use it for equipment that doesn't have a serial number, but the reoccurring charge would be set up on the customer account. And at the end of the month, we would go back to that transactions menu. And just a little bit further down the list at the bottom, we have generate recurring billing charges. I go ahead and click on that and select my branches. This box notes generate recurring billing at the top. And you can see we've got our whole list of product codes. And like I mentioned, any customer can have a charge code listed on their account under recurring with a quantity, and that is how we pick up on charging someone a recurring billing fee. On the very top, you can filter out by customer type if you'd like, and by charge code. So if you do recurring charges for more than one charge code, you can do them individually if you'd like. If you leave them, it'll pick up on anybody that's set to a recurring charge on any of your charge codes. In the middle, we've already pre-filled a minimum balance with a negative, whole bunch of nines, so that we make sure we pick up on every customer, even if they don't have a balance. I also recommend selecting the show detail on recurring billing report. Keeping this report allows us to look through that if a customer calls a disputed charge, or if we need to just match up information and look at what customers were charged during this process. We do also have this use employee for all charges checkbox I recommend as well. And on the bottom left, you do have a delete unposted recurring charges. So again, just like rent, if we accidentally charge this incorrectly, maybe we charged it twice, maybe we forgot to change our module date. So everything went on August 1st. Now we want to back it all out and do it again. You've got a delete unposted. We just need to make sure we do that before we post. I'll select the blue check mark, and you'll see a similar list to how our rents are pop up showing the recurring charge billing. You can also select a customer to remove them from the list. If they were supposed to be removed or we're not supposed to charge them, you can turn that off for the month. And at the bottom, you can see the total amount plus the dollar value of our recurring charges. And we'll click our blue check mark and we'll say yes to printing our billing report. When you do say yes on this report, you get a pop-up, which is nice. We can review it. We're still going to be prompted to say okay to charge the fees before they actually charge, but you're able to see that recurring billing report pop up, and we'll just hit that print button to print it off for ourselves. If you don't need to print it, that's okay. You can close the preview. Our window then closes. And if we go into our transactions, invoices, and adjustments, just like our rents, we'll pick one of these towards the bottom. We've now got our reoccurring charges. This one in particular, I just set up for a monthly service fee, just sort of a generic type fee. Once we post transactions, so again, in between each action, will want to pre-post and post. If you don't have pre-posting, you just go right to posting. And that should place this invoice on the customer account, so it'll show up on their statement for 7/31. Okay. So that's our reoccurring charge process. I also want to go over late fees. Let me get this a little bigger so everybody can see it. I do have a note on late fee setup. I do want to pop in there. I know we talked about just reaching out to us about setup of these items in our checklist, but for late fees, I just want to show you quickly where that is and some information about it, because if it isn't set up right, you actually aren't able to use this process. So we'll talk a little bit about the late fee setup. Generating late fees, very similar to what we just did with rents and recurring billing. And then, of course, we want in between each of our action items to post those late fees once we generate them. Under our lists menu, top left corner, and into the customer setup codes, in the second section, almost all the way down, we've got a late charge code area. Route Manager requires there to be an option for no late charge. That way we can set a customer to not get late charges if they maybe belong in a class of customer that's not supposed to get late charges, or sometimes customers refuse to pay late charges and we just start it off to avoid having to write it off all the time. We do have that option for no late charge, and we still need to fill in our late fee charge code in the middle. So even though this code itself is for no late charge, we don't have any rate for the late fee. We do need to fill in the same late fee charge code as our actual late fee. And then I've just set the apply to balance at never for this no late charge option. So on your customer account under their credit tab, we'd have them set to no late charge, and this would avoid charging them if they were past due. And then I've got standard set up as well here. I was telling Kat the other day, years ago, it was very common to use a Y for yes. So yes and no for late fees, but we also just have an S very commonly now for standard charge for late fees. Under the late charge code setup, I've set them to a $10 late fee at 30 days. So I'm using my charge code for late fee, apply to balance at 30 days, and charge the $10 late fee at 30. You also have a period rate option up top that would do a percentage if that's how your late fees are set up. If it's 3%, 1.5%, you'd fill that in under your period rate there. Okay, so it's a little bit about the late charge code setup. And when we need to charge late fees, I know not everybody does, but if your company does, we would go to that transactions menu into our little month-end square down at the bottom and into generate late charges. So we're going to go ahead and pull that up. It's going to look very familiar to our other charge options. On the top right corner, you'll see that late charge code from and to. Of course, we're not going to do any charging on customers that are set to no late charge. So I'm just going to set my from and to the standard. If you do have different late charge rates, especially with different branches, different locations, this is where you could run them one at a time. So if we wanted to run late fees for anybody that's 1.5% at 60 days, and if we have another option of 3% at 30 days, we can run those separately using the from and to, or using the drop down in the range. We'll just set ours from standard to standard. You do have an option to set a minimum of the past due or invoice or the total account balance. And for example, if a customer only owed us $5, would we want to charge them a $10 late fee on that on 30 days? So if you just think about that, if we have some sort of minimum where we don't want to add to the balance if it's too low, you can use that for the minimum past due amount or the account balance. Our module date is automatically filling in our transaction date for us here, 7/31. And we are going to use this employee for all fees. For late fees, we also have the delete unposted in case we've run them twice or done them wrong. You can always hit the delete unposted and start over as long as we haven't posted. Selecting the blue check mark, we can see the customers that are eligible for a late fee. We can see their balance, and we can see that minimum charge of $10 I put in for everybody over 30. And then it will show you the actual amount. So that way, if you're under a rate of 1.5 or 3%, then you're seeing the total amount to the right. Down at the bottom, we can see how many customers and the total amount of late fees. And the same as our other fees, if we need to change someone to no, if we happen to catch our eye that someone shouldn't be getting charged a late fee and you see them in the list, you can change them to no. I do want to point out too, with any of our fees, if you do select no, you still need to go back to their account and turn off their rent, turn off their recurring billing, or turn off their late fee if that's what's supposed to happen. This will just remove them from charging it during this time. So we'll select our late charge billing. We do get a report automatically for this one that we can print out for ourselves. Gives us a total past due and then how much we're charging for the late fee. We can go ahead and print that off for our records, and then it will ask us, are we okay then to proceed? You can say yes. And that will close once it's done, and we'll go back into that transactions, invoices, and adjustments. We'll go find our late fees at the bottom, and we can see our late fee invoices there. Again, we want to do pre-post and post, or just post if you don't have more than one branch after charging those late fee invoices. Okay, so next in my list, I do have the monthly auto pay. I did mention, and so did Kat, that you may do monthly auto pay after a closed period, after statements, but before closed period, or even before statement. So depending on your company's business practice, if we're sending statements out to customers that are on auto pay, they expect their a payment to be run and their balance to be zero on the statement, you would do it before. If we set them up on auto pay, we send them their bill with the total due, but we run their card after because they're on auto pay. That way the customer can see what the balance was and immediately we'd run their card after. So again, up to you on when you run it. We're just going to step through the process. And I do want to also mention, if you do have ACH processing, it is a separate step to generate those. So I just want to point that out here today so you can see where that is. If you do have both, and you offer monthly auto pay at the end of the month for either one, you would do them in 2 separate steps and then go in and post all those payments. Okay. So we're going to go into our transactions menu under the payments section this time and straight over to credit cards. We're going to go into the process option to the right. And I do just want to point out, if you see down right underneath the credit cards, this is where the ACH process one is. So they're right next to each other. And again, you'd have to do them both if you offer monthly auto pay for credit card and ACH. Credit cards, we'll go ahead and select, choose our branches, and then we get a credit card processing window pop up. Couple of things before we start. The credit card processing option has a window to run the report only. So meaning we can preview exactly who's going to be run and their amount due before we actually go to the process. So if you'd like to just preview a report, you can do that by selecting report only and your blue check mark. Once we get to process and actually want to run the cards, we'll select that. I also want to point out, up to this point, we really want to make sure everything's posted. Our customers that are on monthly auto pay get charged the amount due as of today, as of the last item we posted. So if we've got late fees, reoccurring rents, we want to make sure everything's posted so that when we run their payment, it takes care of their whole balance for the month. I'm going to go ahead and select our process option. And down below, our process date is automatically grabbing our module date. So we don't have to change anything there. We've already got 7/31. If you do card processing after you close the period, certainly you'd choose the first or whichever day you choose to process it. And I'm going to deselect one-time only accounts because during month end, we just want to process those customers we set up for monthly. On the right-hand side, just putting a batch number in, we'll put today's date. I'll do 7/31. And I'll just put CC for credit card. We do also want to choose our bank. If you have multiple banks listed in your route manager, you want to select which for this payment batch, which bank should be displayed on each one of these payments. A couple other things to point out. Right in the middle, you do have an amount filter option. If you only want to run cards for a minimum bill amount, or you want to set a maximum, you can here. So if you only want to run credit cards, if they're $5 or more, I know sometimes there's fees and we don't want to run anybody's card that's $5, $2, something like that. So you can use the amount filter for that, but you'd also want to fill in a maximum then and probably put that up at a really high number so it doesn't decline anybody. You can also include inactive accounts in this if you'd like, and export your results to Excel if you prefer. Over on the right-hand side, a couple of things to point out. Receipts, I'm trying to hover so you can kind of see it here. Receipts are all individual payment receipts. So if you can imagine your month-end batch, you've got hundreds of customers, you're going to be emailing or printing a receipt for each transaction. If you don't need that, go ahead and set it to none. You also have the option to select print and put it to a PDF if you'd like, but that will create individual receipts for each transaction. On the right-hand side, the update forms are what we call in RMA your credit card decline letters if your card declines. There's a both button that's already selected, and that means print and email. Both means if we don't have an email on the customer's account, it will print one off from our printer if it declines. And then it will also pick up on anybody that has an email and email out their decline letter automatically. So leaving it at both will do that for you. Otherwise, if you only want to email those that have an email address, most of us that use card processing now have an email address for our customers. You can select that if you'd like. But this is your receipts and your decline letters. We want to make those selections before we start the batch. Okay. I do only have one customer set up on AutoPay just for purpose today to demonstrate. So we're just going to see one customer pop up. It's going to be pretty quick to run their card. You've got a % complete here. By selecting the blue check mark, it shows us the customer list. So any customers that fit the criteria we filled in, the dollar amount, their name. At this point, if we want to take somebody off the AutoPay, we can select their account in the trash can to not include them in our batch. Otherwise, just select our blue check mark. As soon as we select it, you're going to get a list of cards to be processed, meaning the preliminary list before the cards hit our card processor and either get approved or declined. We always want to print this report. It's not something you can go back into Route Manager and reprint. It's generated at the time we click that blue check mark button. So go ahead and make sure you print that off for yourself, your credit card process list. I'm going to go ahead and close mine out, and we'll get prompted to proceed to process these transactions. So we'll go ahead and click OK. This is going to go really fast, right? If we have hundreds or even thousands, some of our customers have thousands, it's going to take a while. Your card processor will probably go about a second per, maybe even faster if you have basis processing. But once the card batch for each person either approves or declines, you're then getting another credit card processing showing approved and declined, and they'll be on separate pages. You'll show a list of your approved, and then it will separate out into declined. You may also see things like missing credit card info, invalid card, something like that. Anything other than approved did not go through. So if we look at our first report, our cards to be processed, it should match the total amount of cards, whether they're approved or declined down at the bottom here. But this would be what we see after the processing is finished. We can print that off. I'm going to go ahead and close the preview. And if we were to go into our payments section, all the way across here, mail payments, and browse, I can see my payment in here. So running that batch hits the card processor, runs the customer's card, and creates a payment for us in Route Manager. Once that batch is finished, we just need to pre-post and post that payment batch in RMA. Okay, just quickly, the bank transfer process looks exactly the same. And as I mentioned, the two need to be done individually. So if you have eCheck, ACH processing, customers set up on monthly, we do the same batch process. And once that batch is done, apart from the credit cards, we would go in and pre-post and post. Okay. Let me pop this a little bit bigger here. I do want to talk about sending standard statements. We do have options for customers if you're doing a bulk mail or a third party to Matrix or Bluegrass. And when you generate statements, you're just hitting a button and sending your file over to them for them to print and mail for you. So when you're doing a third party, most of you know when you generate the statements themselves, they get sent off elsewhere. But if you do them in-house or you email your customers statements, you would use that standard statement process. And we'll generate a few so you guys can see those steps. The statements are under the reports menu, so the fourth one in, under statements, and standard statements are all the way across at the top. So today I just want to show us a preview so everyone can see the statement format. I'll go ahead and select all. And we'll just do it for one customer. Okay, on the right-hand side, on the top right corner, we're choosing whether we're doing our emailed statements first, standard print statements. Again, these are either emailing out of Route Manager right now for us, or we're printing them to our local printer. If you do any of the bulk mailing from a third party, you can select that for your statement ID. And then once you hit the print button, it actually creates a file and you click OK to send that off. It's a little bit different looking, but that would be the process if you have a bulk party mailing. Otherwise, for email and printed, we would select and do them one at a time. Some of us may have different types of printed and emailed as well. including invoices, not including invoices, open item statements, zero balance, credit balance, things that we may only send to certain customers. So you can make as many different statement types as you like. You just need to generate them each individually at the end of the month. In the middle of my standard statement screen, I've got my module date, 7/31, and everything else on my statement has already been set up under my statement setup area. Let us know if you need help with that. But we've put the logo on, we set it to be due in 20 days, including a payment voucher, etc. So all these options are already selected for us. Down at the bottom, I'm actually going to select our preview so everybody can see it today during the power hour. But when you all are ready to print statements, you actually just want to double check by selecting your printer with the question mark and make sure they're going to print off on the right printer first. And you would go straight to that print button. From there, it should quickly spool and start printing for you. I'm going to select our preview button. Once you either print or hit preview, you would select which month you're doing statements for from the list. Doing our current month, which is July, and our blue check mark. The reason you don't want to print from this section is it will print the word preview because we're in the preview. But I do just want to show everyone a standard formatted statement on a route manager if you're printing or emailing, very commonly used. On the top left, we can put your logo in, or you can just have your company name, address, email, phone number listed. On the right, you can choose whether or not you want the credit card thing up top. It's not very common anymore to have customers fill that out, but it can be if you need it. And then you've got things like their account number, name, total due. And we do have the perforation line there in the middle, and just so that the customer would include the top part with their statement. In the middle, you've got your statement descriptions from your products, your quantities and pricing, as well as your aging. If there's past due, it'll break it out into 30, 60, 90 and show a total amount due. On the bottom section, you have two places to put customizable notes. I have, please visit our website, and on the bottom right, please remit your payment to avoid late fees. And the bottom section is really meant for the customer to keep for themselves. So that's why you'd see your company name again on the bottom left corner. Okay, so it's a sample standard route manager statement that can go out either via email or printed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And my last step before I turn it back over to Kat for reports is just walking through closing the period. Okay, so we're going under our transactions menu, again, where we see all our month-end options, and down to close periods at the very bottom of the list. This is warning me, this is probably good that this came up, warning me we haven't posted everything in the system. So it'll give you an warning until you need to go back and post before you can close the period. We'll probably just go in quick here and do a posting so we can close the period. There we go. Just so everybody can see, there's a few prompts on the close period for those of us that are new and haven't done a month end yet. I know a few of you have joined that I wanted everyone to see when we close the period. So give me just a second here. And okay. Must have had an expired card in there. Make sure there's nothing left to post, and hopefully it'll let us proceed there. There we go. So once we go into our closed period, we get prompted that this will close our month. If you notice, that's going to say MO for month and an abbreviation of the month that should match up at the top of our screen where the period is. And we will say, yes, it does go in single user mode. Kat was talking about single user mode earlier. If anyone else is logged in and you need to close the period, you'll see this screen. It's going to take up about 30 seconds and try to boot all of our our employees out that may have forgotten to log out for the day. Typically, we're going to give everybody a warning that we're, closing the period. We need them all to log out. Or a lot of you do month end at night or early in the morning when there isn't anyone in the office, so you don't have to have anybody get out. You do get a prompt that single user mode has been enabled. And this is what I wanted to talk about. We do get a warning if we haven't done one of the 2 rent billing processes I talked about. That's so we don't close the period and get stuck without getting our rental income for the month. In this case, we don't bill rents not billed. We chose to bill statement billed rents. That's our customers that get the rental on their statement at the end of the month. If you hadn't billed statement billed rent, it would also warn you about that. So when you do make your checklist, just make a note for your team that does month end. When they get to this step, we want to make sure our company does statement billed rent. So as long as it doesn't give us a warning that we didn't do it, or our company does rents not billed, make sure that it never says you didn't do the rents not billed before closing the period. We can say yes to going okay and closing the period. We also remind you if you want to do a backup manually, you can before you proceed. Okay, we must have some balance issues on here. That's okay. So we'll go yes to finish those. You'll see a little flash, percentages. It goes pretty quick. As soon as the close period is done, you'll get a first prompt that your packing's complete. That's deleting all of our old files, the ones you see with the red border. And then it should disable our single user mode. And note that our monthly period closed has completed. And if you'll notice that August period now shows at the top of our screen. Okay, so I know Kat's going to take over and do some sharing on some reports to wrap up here. And we're going to check the chat once we're close to ending the power hour and make sure we answer any questions. And we'll certainly follow up too if you all need some help with month-end planning. And I'll be glad to answer any questions once we're done too. Kat, if you're ready, you can take it away.
Perfect. Hey, let me just grab the screen again. Right, so as Janelle had mentioned, we are going to get into the reports portion of our month-end process. Now, these reports, again, they are just standard reports that are typical you would want to run during a month-end procedure. These will depend, again, on your own company, how you guys would want to process them. There may also be additional reports not listed here that you would want to add to your month-end process. If that is the case, as you guys are going through and creating that checklist to use moving forward, just make sure to notate those additional reports you would want to use. That way, again, if you guys do hire on new employees, you would like to retrain or train them on the new process, you have all the reports that you need specifically as a company listed on your checklist. So some of the standard reports we'll go through is going to be the Business Pulse report, which is a nice snapshot of kind of your overall business transactions. We'll have a sales detail report, which will give you your total sales for the month. And again, sales detail does not include any tax information, which is why our next report would be a sales tax report. This will give you an overview of the sales and tax for the month. We will also do a GL export report for your just general ledger numbers, and then a customer aging report, which is good information on your aging analysis to kind of help you with collections and overdue amounts. Now, getting into these reports, the first one I want to dive into is going to be our Business Pulse report. One thing I do want to take note of that we see a lot kind of in our support department is that certain class codes do not reflect on the report. So you may notice some of your numbers are a bit off. If you ever feel that your Business Pulse report is off, please make sure you review your class codes, which would be under list, product codes, product class codes. In order for these specific class codes to reflect on that Business Pulse report, you need to make sure this option to include on Business Pulse report is selected. If this is not selected, any products under this class code will not reflect in the reporting. Right, now jumping over to the report, you can access this report by going to Reports, Management Reports, Business Pulse Report. Again, we will select all our branches or specific ones that you would like. And this report itself is just very basic, so not too many criteria fields that you would want to fill in. However, again, depending on your process and the date you're in, we want to make sure that our date field is going to be backdated to the month we want to view. So since we just closed out June, I will need to make sure I move this back to July. So we will grab the month of July. And then you also have the ability to restrict it to specific account numbers or charge codes. However, we would want to do a full report. You would leave those options open. And then you can even include gratis amounts if you have any codes that you allow for gratis. Okay. And then just a quick preview of our report. You will see the criteria used at the top. But again, this is a nice little snapshot of what went on with your business, the different types of transactions. It will break down by the class codes, different product charge codes, your sales, the total quantities that were pulled. You can even see profit margins as well. And it's just a nice overall, what took place in our last month. You can even see up here, we'll give you a breakdown too of the different aging buckets, total that was due for that month. You can look at any kind of write-offs if you're going over collection items and so on. Right, and then we shall back out. And the next report I want to dive into is going to be our sales detail report. So again, we will find that under reports, accounting reports, sales and sales detail. Now, I'm sure many of you have used this before, but any of our newcomers that are in, you will probably be using this report quite often. It has a lot of criteria that you can use to filter the information by. So first going through here, you get account numbers, you can look up specific customer type codes, credit classes, major account codes. If you're doing things like commission for sales reps, you can also sort it by that. And then again, we're going to get into the date. So we want to make sure we backdate this to our prior period. Now, upon opening this report, you will always have everything set to default options to include everything. However, if you know there's only a certain credit class or account range that you want to use, just deselect the all options, and then you can change that filtering range there. For this example, though, I will include everything. A nice feature too is we do allow you to break it down by charge code. Some customers like to see, what charge codes brought in either the most sales or, look at your water specific products, coffee specific products. You can filter out here with these options as well. And then down at the bottom, you also get some criteria for customer start dates and end dates. So if you're just looking to see sales for, let's say, new customers during this period, you can deselect the all option. And for the start date, you could set that to just the month of July. And you can see each month as well, how much profit you're bringing in per new customers. Now, besides the many criteria options you have in the middle of this report, another thing I want to take note of is going to be the sort options to the left. In this report, you have 4 different sort options. Not all have to be filled out with a specific item. However, please be aware that the change that you do on these, let's say I want to sort instead of by branch, I'm going to go by account number. It can heavily change the way the report displays for you. So it'll group differently. It may look a little bit different. So I always recommend to newcomers, just play around with the sales detail report. Choose different options. You can have multiple. You can do only one if you'd like. But once you find a criteria and sorting option that you personally like, save it as a filter, and then you can use that when training other members of the team to pull this report. They will have the same filter options moving forward. Now, I'm just going to sort mine by account number and quantity and do a quick preview. Now, as you can see, it's breaking down by the account number. It'll show you the quantity that was sold, the total sales, and so forth. You have all the criteria you have at the top as well. And you can even see if you go to the last page, the total of these reports, how many pages you've got, and all the other detailed information. Now, just a quick overview, again, to show you how it can change, is if I were to sort this, let's say by branch. Actually, let's go by customer type rather than by gallons. And account numbers, it'll break down differently. So again, lots of options to the sales detail report. This will show you total sales excluding tax amounts for the period range that you chose. And again, playing with the sort options, play with the criteria, you'll get different outputs. Right, next we're going to dive into our sales and tax report. So we'll go to reports, accounting reports, tax, sales and tax report. In this window, it is very standard, so you can choose the sales tax IDs that you would like to review. If you would like to sort, which we want to in this situation, by the period, so we would need to get access to the state range, you will need to choose the From History option. And then you would input your date range here that you would like to preview. Now, there are also additional options if you'd like to break down by authority, invoice, and so on. However, for this example, I'm just going to do From History. If you have multiple branches, it will prompt for the branches you would like to view. And then again, it'll give you a nice breakdown. So these are all the sales and tax. As you can see, this means on my invoices that I've had for the month of July, the state tax that I have here shows a total of $601.97 in sales, and the tax collected was 15.50. It'll also give you grand totals at the bottom. And if you have multiple tax codes, it'll break those down as well. All right, next we're going to get into our GL report, which is under reports, accounting reports, general ledger, reprint GL reports. We'll go ahead and select our branches, and then it will give you the date range, which we will need to modify. You can sort by GL account number, which I usually recommend for users kind of playing with this report at first. It'll kind of break it down, give you a better, output of what you're getting per GL account. You can also choose specific account ranges if you'd like. And this is for the GL account numbers, not necessarily a customer account account ID. It is the GL account range. And you can also export this file if you would like to. However, for this purpose, I'm only going to be doing the basics of it. But again, play around with this report. There's many different options you can use to see different information or get a different output. For this, however, I'm just going to do a basic overview for the month of July and just sorting by the GL account number. And then here we will preview our reports. It gives you a nice, breakdown of the different debits, credits within the system, the totals, and then the GL account numbers that are associated to those totals. Now, whenever reviewing this report, I know it's kind of common, you may see a proofing number here, which might be an issue. At that point, please just contact our support team. There may be something with the GL account numbers or just the records in general we would have to review to make sure it's properly processed. But a good GL report, you should see 0 in the proofing, and you will have your total numbers here. All right. And then once you exit out of that report, it'll also give you detail. So the first prompt is just a summary of the different GL accounts. However, once you exit out of the first report, it'll bring up a detailed report, which will break it down by each individual item. So again, this will kind of help you too. If there is a proofing issue, you have a number that's off here, you can look at the detail, see if that number kind of matches with any one of these line items. If so, it may be something specific to that record. But again, if you guys do notice anything like that, just contact our support team. We can help you get it sorted. All right, and then lastly, we are going to do our customer aging analysis report. And that's going to be under reports, accounting reports, customer aging analysis. So this is a really nice report because it'll tell you all the balances due for all your accounts within the system. And within this report, again, there's many different criteria options. So you can sort by certain aging brackets of invoices, how they're old, new. Obviously, everything will default to all. But again, if I just wanted to look at current, anybody that has a current amount due, I could just select current. For this example, though, I will show all. You can also exclude balances. So if I don't care about anyone with credits, I could just set the balance to a penny or more. And then you can choose to do a summary only, or you can also get a breakdown. And then also we would want to look at the periods. Now, if we had prior periods, which this test information does not have history, it'll show you the months. So it would show like February, March, April, and you can choose those. You can always look at prior periods as well. It will give you the total for that whole period. And then again, you have your sorting options to the left. Play around with them. This one I wouldn't say is as intense as a sales detail report, but one nice sorting option I do want to bring to your guys' attention is the option to sort by the highest to lowest balance. On this report, it will mention the highest account that has the most due to you. So in case you need to give this to your accounting or office staff to start, making calls to get payments, it'll list the highest priority customers first. And then one last thing I want to show is exclude zero balance customers. If they do not owe anything, you do not necessarily want to see, any kind of amounts that were due previously since they're paid off. You can just click this option. It'll shorten your report. And then we will run this really quick. And here is just a basic summary. So again, this is going to have your criteria. It'll break down by the aging buckets and the total that is due as a company between all your open accounts. So here is a quick overview. However, if you wanted that detail, remove summary only, run the report again, and then you'll get a breakdown by account. Now, anything in bold is when the customer is past due. Oh, I'm sorry. The asterisk is when the customer is past due. Bold should be for the hold customers. But to your right, you can see your totals. And again, because we did that sorting option, you'll notice at the top, our highest account that owes the most will be listed. And then you will have even a phone number here, which is pretty nice because you can kind of print this report out, give it to your staff who will be making the phone calls, and they can just call directly from this list. All right, and then that is it for our aging analysis. Now I know we're a bit over, you guys, but again, that is the conclusion of our reports for month end, the different procedures that you'll be using during the month end process. And again, these are going to be custom to each company. So not every company is going to have the same exact process. We just highly recommend once your company has decided on, what charges they want to generate, what reports they want to pull, the different statements that they would like to run. Make sure you create that checklist and have it available on hand to, any new staff or anybody else that would be taking over those roles of closing out your period. And if anybody does have any additional assistance they need with setup for any of these processes that were shown today, feel free to contact us. We can get you with our support team and we can do a walkthrough of the process. Otherwise, right now, we will go ahead and move into any questions anyone may have. So feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We can go ahead and answer them. Otherwise, thank you guys so much again for another Power Hour.
Kat, we do have a question from Fran,
Okay.
and it's to Janelle. She wants to know how you can go about changing the memos on the statements.
So the memos that Janelle had mentioned for the statements, if you guys go into your customer, so lists, customer setup codes, statement codes, there is a messages tab. And the first area that she had, or sorry, the bottom area for the please remit payment, you can put the message in here. That shows at the very bottom of the statement. And then the one that's slightly above that, underneath the total amounts for, let's say, that customer, you would have the statement notes, which again, she had, please visit our website so you can also modify it in here. So you just click the modify button, type in the message that you want, and then that would then display on this specific statement code moving forward. Just make sure if that needs to be applied across multiple statements that you guys go into each statement code and you update that information. So, all right, any other questions?
There are no further questions.
Perfect. Then we will go ahead and conclude our Power Hour for today, you guys. Thank you so much all for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.